Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, wherever you may be in the world. Going to start the actual laying of the painting this morning with what I call a transparent stain in with the medium of a gum turpentine or your odourless fast-drying solvent. But first of all, I'll go through my colours a bit and a few of the main mixes that I use, or the mixes that will be used in this painting as well. The live feed is mostly on the camera here, but we're using the GoPro as well, and Josh will upload the edited version with some of the close-ups of the GoPro and the other camera all mixed together this afternoon. So the final upload be on this afternoon on your Facebook page, this page, or the YouTube for everyone. Some people ask the brands and paints that I use. I use a mix. I've still got paints that are like 30 years old, 30, 40 years old. I still use, like I said, that yellow ochre before. There's some of the brands. The Michael Harding brand, they probably makes the best paint in the world at the moment, I think. I started using them about 25 years ago. When I had a couple of exhibitions in London, I used to bring the paints back with me. No one in Australia was using them back then. English artists, friends, Tony Bream and Ben Long, American artists, were just started using them and showed me some. And the pigment was so much stronger and made to the original mixings, the original way the paint was made when it was created and invented in the time or era of the paint. It gets it pretty right. They don't have a lot of alkyds and fillers in them. That's why they're a bit dearer, but the pigment's nearly twice as strong, but you can feel the weight. When you buy a tube of paint, you feel the weight, and if it's really light, it's really usually not a very good paint. If it's got a bit of weight to it, it means there's a lot of pigment in there. You can feel the weight in the tube of paint. Big difference. I'll just go on with a few of the mixes. Now, a lot of the mix today, especially in our darks here, are going to be, first of all, I will grab hold of my ultramarine blue. Here we go, we'll push some here. Let's see that, ultramarine blue. That's going to be the main mix for nearly everything in this painting, actually. Now, my palette actually consists of, I should have said earlier on, my palette consists of warms and cools in every version you might notice here. So we've got our ultramarine, which is a bit of a warmer blue. We've got our cerulean blue, or I do use the manganese zinc blue that Michael Harding, which is only series 1 too, which is a nice paint. Very similar, it's in the cool blues. Cad Scarlet, which is my warm red, or a Cad Red Light in the Michael Harding, which is a nice red too, a yummy red. I've used it all up, used the last bit of it the other day, so I can't show you. Alizarin Crimson, that's your cooler red. Transparent Red Oxide is my earthy red, it's quite a warm red. The Indian Red, which I use a little bit now and then, is sort of my cooler red, makes some lovely violets and greys when mixed with a ultramarine or a black as well. The yellow range, I have the good old yellow ochre, which is great for landscape everywhere around the world. Cad Yellow Mid, you can see it's a slightly limer Cad Yellow. You have to be careful because sometimes you buy a cadmium yellow and it tends more towards the orange than a limey yellow. It's always easier to come back with a bit of red in it, but it's harder to bring that back to make a nice green. Sometimes the greens can be a bit muddy if you're using a Cad yellow that's on the orange side. So I prefer the one slightly on the limey side. Australian Red Gold, one of my favourites. That's an Art Spectrum brand, that one. Well, I think Michael Harding's working on maybe a version of it. The lemon yellow, which you can only get in the whole world. Michael Harding is the only brand that makes this lemon yellow. And I think I've said before, it's made of barium. It's one of my favourite yellows, especially in the distance. You get subtle greys. You won't go too raw in the distance when you go back with this lemon yellow. It's fantastic. Also good for portraits, reflected light in portraits and that sort of thing. It's a great colour. The turquoise and the viridian, I mostly use those when I'm doing seascapes, or sometimes I use a little bit of turquoise mixed with that yellow, the cad yellow, if I need a real limey sort of raw green in a way, which I try to avoid a lot in my paintings, raw green or greens. Prefer more the harmonious in the grey side. But we'll get on to a little bit of the mix that we'll be using today. Now the first mix I'm going to mix that'll wash through here in the darks will be the ultramarine with a little bit of this transparent red oxide. Look at that, beautiful. Now that's probably, when I look for the darkest tone I can possibly get in this subject, ultramarine and transparent red oxide together are the darkest tones I can mix. I can mix in the cooler side of it the ultramarine and the alizarin. That'll give me another one as well. Just as strong in tone, but slightly, as you can see, it'll be slightly cooler. I'll add a little bit of white, which I usually, sometimes when I'm trying a new paint, I'll just squeeze a bit out and I'll just do it in tones with white, just to give me an idea of the strength of pigment, the values I can get out of it, you know, the coolness, the warmness, etc. So get to know your colours well, what they'll do for you, the cool ones, the warm ones, so then you can go straight to them. Now, if I'm getting some of these greens, these darker, richer greens in here, all I have to do is pick up maybe a little bit of our red gold. And if you haven't got that, you could use the Indian yellow, and we can also use a little bit of that cad yellow, or maybe a little bit of yellow ochre. So it's virtually red, yellow and blue mix, but this is in the stronger version. So I'm pushing a bit of it in here. See that I'm getting same tone, but it's going to be slightly green, the variations. They're the strongest. Blue, browny, black colour, greeny, blue colour. They're the strongest ones I can mix up out of those three mixes. Ultra, red gold, transparent red oxide. If I'm going for, I can also, just to show you, add a little bit of that into it, and that'll give me a greener version. So just add a little bit of that cad yellow into it to get the variation there. There we go. That's probably cooled it, even cooled that down a fraction. Look at that, you can see the colouring that are getting closer. Josh can show you when he edits all this. So that's a mix for a lot of the darks there. Now, even we're doing the highlights, I'll use a bit of that red gold, a little bit of cerulean, maybe a little bit of the white. And look at that, there we've got our highlight of the tree. Look at that. We just have to organise the shapes, and there's a tree for us. See that value of light and shade there? Again, I'm talking about light and shade, aren't I? See that? That's just out of our three colours, red, yellow and blue, but on the earth side of things. Now, if I'm looking at distance in a painting, I like to use what you maybe call your secondary colours for your distance. So mid-distance in the landscape, going back, everything in the landscape goes into a blue-grey as it disappears into our distance. And good mix for this, usually, again, straight to the ultramarine. And maybe a little bit of alizarin. And look at this lemon yellow here. It's beautiful. Look at that. See, if I put a cad or any other lemon yellow on it, that would go into a raw green. So that's gone into a beautiful grey atmospheric colour. And it gives you that illusion of the grey greens in the distance. I hope you can see that. See that there? If I want to warm it a fraction, I can add a little bit of cad scarlet into it. There we go. Look at that. All in those beautiful greys of a distant landscape. You can't go wrong with the lemon yellow, the ultramarine or alizarin in its mixes into the distance. If you want to highlight, add a bit more white to it. See, that's lightening up. See, that's gone into that beautiful grey. So once we mix red, yellow and blue together, we're going to get a form of grey. And adding white to it's lightening the value of it up. And that's great for the distance, this mix here. You can't go wrong. You can't go raw with it. So if we tried to add a little bit of this cad yellow, it's so much harder to break it down. So that goes into a raw green straight up compared to there. That's where people make the mistake. I see a lot of students work and people starting to paint, and they always think the distance is way more greener than what it is. And when I'm outside plein air painting, I always squint my eyes down at the subject, and that gives me a feeling of the depth and greyness as well. Or if you're and another little trick too, which is handy if you're doing a bit of plein air painting, which 80% of my work is forming a circle like that and looking through it, and that isolates the colour for you and gives you an idea of how grey it is and the strength of it just by looking through it. It's similar to looking through the gaps in the trees, little gaps in the trees. You'll see how atmospheric or blue it is behind those trees. Because again, that's our tone for us working. Dark, light, sitting back in nature, correct values of light and shade. And everyone did pretty well. I saw a lot of people's work on their black and whites, though I think they got the idea. And that's good practice for you. Even just do some little ones on oil paper or cheap canvas. It's just treated as a sketch, and it'll teach you to see dark and light and shade, which is what we're going to see in this painting quite a bit here. I'll just show you a little bit of the, when you introduce a bit of the Indian red, which I didn't use for a long time. It makes a lovely, again, atmospheric purpley grey. Look at that earthy sort of purple grey. Indian red's a very strong pigment too. A lot of portrait painters use it as well. I hadn't used it for about 20 years and I picked it up again and thought, wow, I've been missing out a bit there. Also makes a lovely combination when you get a, which I noticed, a turquoise next to it as well. Sometimes I put that together. It's a lovely combination around a focal point, just as something to do. Cerulean I use in skies, and when I want cools and shadows, cerulean's a great mix. Also, if I need to make some limey or brighter greens, see that? You can put that together as a mix. So that's giving me a brighter limey green with the cerulean and our cad yellow mix together. So there we go. That mix there, completely different. If we add a bit of yellow ochre into it, it'll bring it warmed up and give it an earthy yellowy green. If we want it more yellowy green, we'll add a bit more yellow to it. And so we've got a little bit of reddy green, we'll add a bit of red to it. See there we go, up into there. That's given us a reddy green, which is prevalent in our, especially the Australian gumleaf foliage. And you can get those whole three mixes in the one tree and the colour. So people sort of say, what colour did you use there? How'd you make that colour? That there is the lesson on colour mixing. And the only way to learn is by you relating to your subject, mixing around, placing it on, making the adjustments. Is it warm, cool, red, yellow, green more? So you're making that adjustment when you're going back from the palette to your picture. Very important. Because a lot of people mix it there and think, oh, I don't know whether that's right. The only way you're going to know it's right, if you place a bit on there, step back and make a judgment. What do I have to do? Do I have to make that warmer, cooler, brighter, darker, etc.? Red, yellow and blue again, with white, of course. So that's the 3 mixes. Because I can't tell you for that tree mid-distance to make 2/3 of white, 1/10 of a cad scarlet, 1/10 of a cad yellow, mixed with 5% cerulean, can I? That all has to be your own interpretation, your own mixing it around. But that's the theory, and the basic theory of colours, or what colour did you use there, is the colour wheel. My whites, this is a titanium. I use a couple of different ones, a couple of different whites depending on the subject and what technique and oil I'm using. My main one that I really like is the French Lafranc white. It's got a lovely body to it, creamy body, solidness to it that leaves a nice toothing in the brush when you lay it on. The other white I like to use too is the Cremintz, the Michael Harding's Cremintz white. I also have a flake white, I think it's the Michael Harding, and I have a Lafranc flake white. The art spectrum's not too bad. It's just getting that personal feel, what you like in the way the paint comes off the brush and lays on the surface that you're preparing and making. The difference between, people ask, the difference between whites, what's the difference? We have the titanium, which is very, I shall push a bit into here just to show you. See how opaque that is, very opaque. Look at that, very opaque. So it's not as transparent. When I add, say, a bit of this Cremintz in, you'll see how quickly that sort of takes up the colour. Look at that. I put a lot more Cremintz on there too than the titanium. But see the difference, the richness, I don't know if you can pick that up there or not, the richness in pigment between those two paints. And sometimes if I'm blocking in a big area quickly in plein air, I'll have Cremintz because it mixes in quickly. I can spend another 5 minutes whacking a lot of pigment into the titanium, where the Cremintz will mix very quickly to block in some big colour shapes. And the titanium, which I'll use mostly in this, it's opaque, so it'll get the highlights for you. So if you want to key things up and brighten up, the tin, I'll use a lot of titanium white in the highlights of the roofs here, that sort of thing. That'll give you your highlights that you will require in this picture. Another little thing. Let's look here. Oh, there's this. I'll do it to this one. I'm just looking at it, but at home, if you're on a computer and you've got these images, you can do the Photoshop. But I'll do it on this one. I'll save that one because I quite like the tank's detail. I love this, what's happening with the tank just here, and I think I want to maybe bring it over here a bit in the composition and keep it in the painting. But here it sort of becomes, because it's right in this spot here, it sort of becomes the focal point. Some, it's your personal preference. I think Linda Crank from America did a lovely little black and white, and she actually sort of made this the focal point, and it worked in the painting. So it's your personal preference on what you like and want to express in the subject, It's like I say, and I think Richard Schmid said in his book, which was a great quote, when you paint a picture, ask yourself, why am I going to paint this picture? And when it gets down to your own personal subjects that you'll pick after this, because as I said, this is just purely a lesson for you guys to understand how I construct a painting. You might look at this and say, oh, it's horrible, I don't want to paint it. But you can use this as an architectural feature if you're going to paint an architectural picture yourself. But I'm asking myself, what do I like about this painting? And I love this little bit in this little shed in here, lit up against the darks and that sort of thing. So it's sort of going to become, I'll do my own photoshopping here with my own paint. That's better. And I like that little tank there, it works nice. And then we have, I'll get another, a little bit of white here. Come on, where is it? This one will do the job. So I've already put a little bit of clove oil in that white paint. I want it to dry. The clove oil is going to keep it wet for a week or so while I'm demonstrating for you. And the acrylic painters too are I'm not sure the equivalents. Probably you get an Indian yellow for the red gold. And I know with acrylic that the ultramarine is a bit weak in pigment. It's probably half the tone of the oil. So I'm thinking maybe if you push a little bit of black into your ultramarine, might strengthen it to use in these darks. But when you paint the sky, just use the ultramarine and cerulean in your acrylic. So remember that. A bit of yellow ochre, so we get it. Grey him down, that'll be the grass. Shows you sort of the brightness and the tone there, doesn't it? Out of tone, we're talking about tone, so it's out of tone. If you get my drift on tone, let's put it back in tone. There, it's getting a bit better. That sits it in there. And the grey. It's the crude version of Photoshop. These posts also look a little bit regimented there. See how they're, they sort of look like broken teeth or something. They look better. Maybe one there. Get rid of him. He takes the eye a bit. So that's improving it already. Look at that. And these are the things you've got to look at when you're looking at a subject, even in nature, because it takes so much to learn this. What to put in, and what to leave out in your painting, you know, in a subject. And as I said, a lot of the time my revision, when I got home from painting trips, I wouldn't look at the painting for a month or two, then I'd bring it out and I'd say, why did I paint that in there? Yeah, because it was in there, because it was in front of me. That happens so much when we're learning to paint. But it's trying to work out of, which took me only about 20 years to learn, the importance of the focal point in your painting, working out of the focal point. And bring him down a fraction, I reckon, that building. Which we'll try and do here, because I'll give this a stain in and then we'll go from general colour stain in, and then we can go from there. There we go, look at that. I think I might put a bit of tin on that building here as well. Just there we go, look at that. Yeah, that looks better. There we go. And it's good because it gives you just a general idea. It sort of cements it in your mind's eye and the head. You know, a lot of the time when I paint the picture, I look at the subject. The painting is painted in my head before it even goes onto the canvas. And that's what you've got to train yourself to do. If you can train yourself to visualize. Visualize is very important in painting. Visualization and training your mind to paint the picture in your head before you even pick up a brush. I think Michelangelo said of David, he saw in the stone before he even picked up a chisel. It was already carved in his head before he even picked up the mallet. Okay. Now, as I said yesterday, always looking at, I see the horizontal here. We will do something about that. I think I posted I might get rid of that pole. Even if it's a little one in there. That's better. Yeah, now the eye goes in there better into our building. That little shadowed window there will look good. There we go, look at that. And I don't mind. I think another one I had to break up some of this obvious sort of, we might even bring up, I don't know how high, but that'll help. Bring a power pole into there instead. We'll have a look at that. A bit of shadow on him. I've got my other photo there with the detail anyway if I need to. If it goes up further, it might be distracting. Anyway, we can do it. That's the beauty of this. You're just doing a Photoshop to give yourself an idea. There we go. Yeah, I think that's going to work. So that works, breaking up that thing there. These are all most important compositional things in your painting, to get working. And these posts could come down a bit further. That's better into our subject. And I'm going to start mine about there roughly. I think we could do with a little, maybe a little bush in here. That'll help just to break up that, maybe a blackberry bush or something like that. There we go. Yeah, that helps a bit. And because of the dark value there, we get a little bit of dark. See that? On the side of it. Now look at our dark and light values. Remember that? And maybe even over here. Some of those colours. There we go. In here, if you do a wider version, you might even get, maybe a bit of a twiggy fruit tree. Those old fruit trees, there's a few over there. So I might even bring them down into the painting here a bit, just to, that helps break up that as well. And I might embellish a little bit of late autumn colour there. There we go, look at that. And a few darks. And that, yeah. You could probably come to there even. To indicate a little bit of shadow off him even. Oh, he's there. Yeah, look at that. I think that's a better picture. That's going to make a better painting for us. But I think I'm bringing my composition more off to the edge of the other one. We don't need a lot of that there. The eye goes over, so you block it there and you go into there more. This is the part I like the best in here, so I might even move that over just a fraction over that way, that building there. There we go. A little bit of photoshopping for you. Now, oh, that's right, I forgot about that. People wanted to see. There we go. You see that? They didn't get a full view of about my third painting, so I brought it back out to re-show it for you, just to make us all feel a lot better. And also, these are a few for the people just watching it on YouTube that aren't on Facebook, that get the feed a bit later today. These are some little thumbnail sketches. See the little sketches giving us little value shapes and things like that. And I did a bit of detail of the tank on that one. Just to iron out a few bugs or mull it over in your head, especially if I'm doing a big painting in the studio and that sort of thing. I'll sketch it out. If it's not sort of thoroughly or 100% in my mind's eye, I like to get an idea, and I think that there has given me a good idea. Now, put him over here, I think. I will put these up a bit later because I don't want the terps running all over them when I do the staining right now. Just sitting there and here, but I'll use both of them, but I'll pin them back up when this is done. Now, I'm going to paint this one. It's about a 60 by 45, but paint whatever you're comfortable with. Compose it the way you see it, the way you're comfortable with the composition, what you like in this particular subject. Darks and lights, play of light, that sort of thing in this picture. So you don't have to stick exactly the way I'm doing the composition, but all sides of the painting. So this is on some hardboard or masonite, as we say here, and I've given it 3 coats of gesso. Then a very light sanding it then. It's got a lovely texture, just a lovely and variation of stroke. I'll do a little video on board preparation. I'll upload it onto the page later so you can have a look at it. But they're usually 3 stages, and I just feather it off as it's drying and it gets a lovely surface. And also some of the canvas can be a bit boring, so I'll also give the canvas a few coats of gesso just to make the painting surface more interesting to paint on. Now I'm going to scrape the area clean, and we'll start with a transparent staining. The acrylic painters can use a lot of water in their mix if they want to, block in quickly. I'll probably use a bit of gum turpentine because I've got a good studio that's got plenty of airflow. It's a good size. But as I said, the archival oil, which archival oil odorless solvent, it's great for confined spaces and workshops. You don't no smell at all with that. Now, what I do, a lot of people say, when I'm on a painting trip and I'm painting for 3 or 4 days consecutively, I'll see all that leftover paint there? I'll keep it up there because it's a beautiful grey, and I'll be able to use that. I'll use that in my painting later stages because it's already got the red, yellow and blue on it for me, so I'll use that again. And I'll just give that a bit of a wipe down, start again. As I said to people, palette management is so important in the painting process. Keeping your palette organised, your colours all one edge, big mixing area so you don't get muddy. You can mix a light area, you can mix a dark, and not get it tarnished by a light grey or something to ruin your mix. And that's where a lot of people go wrong too when their paintings go muddy, is getting that other colour in there that shouldn't be in there. Okay, let's make a start here. Where's that brush? And this one here, maybe this one will do the job. Now, I'll sketch it in. I'll just use a bit of that Ultra and get a bit more of that up there. It's a nice, rich, vibrant ultramarine, this Michael Harding. Now, some people asked about buying, I forgot to say, we've got, which is very generous, we've got Luke Senior online with our group, and he's giving 20% discount to just our members. I think there's something, a code you log in to, that says you're a member of this group. So it's pretty generous. He gives a 10% discount for everyone else on there, on his website, on his paints. and brushes or whatever, and he does have this drying, odorless drying solvent, fast drying. Yeah, so it's an extra 10% for our group, so it amounts to 20% for everyone. So it's very, I think he posted something on the page there so you can have a look anyway. So we'll go. I like to just sketch in with a sort of a light purpley grey. We're looking at a purpley grey sort of colour here. I don't want to sketch in with an earthy colour because when it gets up to the sky areas and that sort of thing, you don't want to be trying to cover a blue sky, a nice subtle blue sky against a burnt sienna or a red oxide or a raw sort of colour. Where this colour here is going to give me, the about that much foreground roughly, is going to give me something I can sort of paint over and cover reasonably easy. It's quite a steep pitch on this roof. It will come down. No, a bit more, is it? Yeah, what about there? Just get a rough ballpark figure. I like this tree. I'm making it a bit bigger here because it'll sort of take us down into the picture. I won't have him above us. See a compositional problem already? Look at that sort of peak and peak. These are little things you got to think about when you're composing your painting. These, shapes and that sort of thing. Anyway, the beauty of this is this very light sort of staining is it's mostly just turpentine, our power pole roughly there will be, I think. We'll see. And we got a bit of a water tank there. And then the height of that building, the grass is about there. We'll have a little bit of shadow coming off here. And maybe that bushy tree we're talking about there, a little bit of bush there. Cover that edge of the building up a bit. I'm just sketching in at this stage, and I do it with plein air as well. I'm just giving myself a ballpark figure of what I'm after here. As you can see, it's giving me the composition. I want to get that angle. It's a nice angle there. I'll get that. And you've got to make sure when doing your building, get that angle there and that angle there the same. See that? And perspective's running down like that. That's it. Now, the thing I like about the painting, I'm gauging the height of our shed. He's roughly about there. Bring him about there. The grass is so high it sort of makes the shed look a bit funny there, but I'll get that. And our other dark tree, this lovely shape here, comes into it. So we're gauging the height of the trees to our shed. I think something about that looks good. I love this little gap here, letting a little bit of the sky hit the ridge of the roof as well. Looks good. Now dark there. And this is what I like, is the light on this roof and the end of it as well. There we go. That'll do us. Something about there. And getting that angle and pitch to it as well there. There we go. Remember, Josh is going to re-edit this, so if I'm blocking it here and there, you'll get a bit of the GoPro. You'll get a bit of the GoPro close-ups in the final cut later for you, because it's ideal with these lessons sort of designed for you. Is that ideal? You can go backwards and forwards to them, in your own time and re-listen to things that I've said. And this lovely big shadow in behind that tree as well. We got him. It's like casting a shadow of another tree in behind it. but it really makes that roof kick. And we've got other variation there, look like willows that have half lost their leaves, which they'll give us a little bit of variation. It gives a bit of variation in the colour of all these greens we got back here. I might even if I take him out there, maybe there, we'll see. Anyway, when I block it in, I'll get an idea of the shapes. And I said the beauty of blocking in with just this transparent staining, I can rub it back and lift it out and paint over it to what I want. There's the shape there. Then we got this lovely scale where they drop down back there as well, and those ones there. So we're getting a fair bit of mass in there. I'm not sure about that hill there. That might even, I don't know, might even look good in there, just as a backdrop. Give us that extra stage in the painting. I think it could be handy. Maybe. There, we'll see anyway. As I've said, these are things I mull around, and as the painting develops, it will tell me what it needs. As I say, this is sort of our mapping out stage. Might keep him there roughly. Goes up a bit higher. So I'm constantly looking back at, you know, where the angles run into our roofs, and it gives me the scale, you know, the scale. And it looks good. He's all sort of covered up. We'll knock him back even more there so he doesn't fight with that a great deal in our painting. I want to keep this yummy little area here as our focal. As I said, as we develop here, the painting's going to tell us what it needs. And we've got another one, which is that hidden through there, isn't it, virtually? This one, big one, that's a fair roof too, and look at that compared to that. Anyway, just indicated in there's a lot of scrub. And I do like this, there's our line through there roughly. I do like that bit of rundown, sort of rundown shed and post and stuff over there. We'll see how we go with that. It's a nice little thing to break up. See how it breaks up this horizontal. Might even bring him forward a fraction. And he that looks good roughly. A lot of the time I just sketch it in like this. I'm not going to stain it over, because when I roughly sketch it in like this, it just gives me an idea in my mind's eye of, you know, the composition I want in this painting. See that gum turp? So even though we got a bit of a drizzly, rainy day in Barara today, as you can see out there, that sort of gum turps is even drying that off, you know, reasonably quick for me. There. And as I said, I did like that tank there, so I might even give myself a rough idea here, and we'll see if it'll work. Even just a, you know, it doesn't have to be a tank, it can be a sheet of tin or something. Yeah, just off the edge there. Lower it down, just make a smaller version of it. As I said, you can just stain it in, block it in with a bit of there. So that's only a bit of alizarin and the ultramarine I've used to sketch in there so far. That's giving me an idea. These are going to be knocked back because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So that one there is only just going to be indicated. I'm going to even knock this fella back to soften a bit of the foliage over him. And we'll get this fella here. I wonder if I should take him over and him there. I think I should take him over, that's what it is. Just that bit more, there we go, look at that. My eye sort of told me to move this shed over into the painting a bit more. Or just my sixth sense. and that one there can go that way. As I said, so that's the beauty of this thin terpsy or thin medium sort of stain in. Now we'll come to the business end of the deal, where we're going to stain in, and even when I stain in, I stain all the darks in first, because that's a rule of oil painting. Dark colours first, and the underlay of this, you can see all the little darks in the grass there, which will be one big stain in. Nice big brush to stain in with, and for the moment, right, we've got our ultramarine and a bit of the red oxide here, nice rich dark, a bit more ultramarine, and we'll stain in the darks in our oak trees first. There we go, look at that, here we go. Let's give it a whirl. This is a bit like, it's a bit like doing, a turpentine watercolour in a way, but reverse, darks first. Bit more terpsy, there we go, look at that. Doesn't matter if it dribbles here and there, you can just grab it later. As I said, this is just a great way of giving you a ballpark figure of what we're after here in the painting. Ah, yeah, look at that. See, again, that's even like our tonal black and white studies, and look at that. It's giving us just the build-up. And this is the way, this is the same way I virtually approach my plein air painting in a similar sort of fashion. I'm blocking in, you know, a lot of the dark values first. And the beauty of this sort of technique is I'm aiming to get a lot of the white canvas covered up very quickly. So, lighten them a bit there. So it gives me something to relate to. I'm not relating, just working a little bit of area here, and I've got nothing else to relate to. This sort of technique gives me a base to sort of go with. And the trees at the back there, I have to get some more blue here. A bit more bluey grey in these grey trees. We'll get a feeling of those. And we've got just a rough idea of them coming through. I think I will push a little feel of it. That hill that's over on the right, we're bringing through there. Maybe just there a bit too. That'll give us the light break. Might even break it through this tree just there as well. You see, I'm getting all my darks in here. And I'll just leave a few light there, the feeling of where that building is. And there's our roof for this one here. There we go. We've got the nice strong darks, having the dark values of the trees there. And they'll be thickened up as well as we go. But as I said, this is just giving me a basis and a ballpark figure. It's very thin with the terps, or your odorless fast drying solvent, either one you want to use if you're inside. And yeah, like I say, look at that. Even coming out as a focal point, there already isn't that little area in there. I think Whistler said he used to draw. Whistler, fantastic, one of my favourite artists. He used to start around his focal point and draw out of that, and he said you can't go wrong with your painting or your subject if you can nail your focal point and bring your painting out of your focal point. And this sort of technique here helps you do that, because because you're just getting that thin colour lay in, and it establishes it very quickly. Establish it very quickly. Push a little bit of that red oxide, warm it up a bit. Look at that. So just push that bit of red oxide in there, gave me, just warmed up that dark value I wanted there a bit. Look at these lovely darks in here too, in that shed there. A few of them. I'll just put them on thin. I'll leave that mostly white because it is very high keyed. And I'm just picking out a few of where the darker value is in it. And the shadow running through there if the tank wasn't there, which will be a nice dark and light thing happening for us there. There we go. And bring that feeling of a blackberry bush there. One there, we'll see. And here we have the nice darks. They're quite strong, those darks. I like the design in those fences there, but a lot of the time you have to be careful in your painting that you don't have too many scattered shapes and too many focal points in there. One has to complement the other. We want to take the eye into here and make that as interesting as possible in here. That's what we want in the painting. Anyway, we'll see. There we go. Now, we've got slightly, we might just add a little bit of cerulean into that blue because the iron gets a lovely, especially in shadow, tin and iron, get those lovely cool bluey greys that reflect our blue sky into it. Because the sky is pretty blue in here, we're going to get quite a bit of lovely cool blues bouncing into our shadows on the ground, shadows of the roofs, little bits here and there. One thing, and this is a good thing to remember, especially when you're painting off photos, my old artist friend Greg Turner, who helped me a lot in the early days, along with Uncle Doug Seeley, of course, and my father paints as a hobby. He's a builder by trade, but he's had quite a good eye. Actually, I've got to glue this down. This is that's one of my father's. I got to glue down. I quite liked it and picked it up the other day. He does about one oil painting a year because trout fishing gets in the way. My brother Richie, he lives down the south coast. He does some nice paintings, but one day I've got all of their paintings, one or two of each painting, and I'll show you a whole family line of Seeley paintings. But back to this. I'm going to get a lovely rich stain in here, very thin, and then we can build up our lights over it. Now that's going to be one of my standard mixes, the red oxide and the ultramarine. Now it depends on the amounts you put in the red oxide and the ultramarine that's going to give you the strength of it. And we'll go, look if I push, there we go, look, I pushed a bit more of the red oxide, that's liven it up, look at that. And all this, just look how thin that is. But that's the strongest dark and light I can mix, see that? And that will help bring all these little darks you see in the subtle bits of the grasses and that sort of thing. And sometimes if they're not there, I'll even push them in there to help give me a little bit of strength and a bit of what I like to say, a bit of grunt to the painting. Give the painting a bit of grunt with your darks and lights. And as we're going back, we might even light. So it's lightening out a bit. I'm just pushing the lighter. You might even put a little bit of alizarin into that mix to get a cooler cooler blue-grey. There we go, look at that. I don't even love that light value there and a little bit of light value there just to give me an idea of the key of the grass and that sort of thing. There we go. And now I'm going to swap to a clean brush because I want to get a feeling, a bit of a cleaner feel of a blue sky in here and a bit of our cloud. So we'll just go a bit of the ultramarine, maybe a little bit of cerulean. And there we go. There's a bit of blue. I don't mind going a bit stronger. As I said, in oils, I don't mind going a little bit stronger and richer in colour and in value when I start, because it's always easier, it's always much easier to lighten up in oils. Where in watercolour, the reverse. You want to be conscious of how dark you're going first up with their lights in a watercolour wash and that sort of thing. Where this, you see how quickly I'm getting this white canvas or the white hardboard here covered up. Look at that. See, I'm using a big brush too. Good 1 inch bright here. How quickly we're getting all this happening. And we bring it down, even there's our roof there. We'll see. It's always good. I think old Lloyd Rees, I think I saw an interview of him on TV. And it's one of his little classic lines in an interview is always, and for composition, was always let the eye out of the painting. And that's sort of a little letting the eye out. Our distant hill here is letting the eye out. So it's creating depth. And we might thin him down there even. Like that. Through there even. That bit of blue there. Eliminating barriers in the painting. A lot of the time the landscape will show that to you, but as I said, if you renew your license, you can do anything. And a lot of the time, if I want to, once I put that on, it's pretty easy to, you know, if I want to lighten it back a bit, see that? Just run a cloth or a tissue through it. And it even softens it. See, that groups it for us as well. And that gives me a nice sort of underpainting to work with, doesn't it? See that? Through there. And a rough idea of our composition. Look at that. There. Some nice strong darks. They'll dry right off. That gum terps dries pretty quickly. Especially when you're outside or in summertime as well. But as I said, this is sort of we're getting into a mid-autumn here, starting to cool, starting to get the feel of winter in Australia. And everyone else, a few of our people have tuned in and doing the course up in the States and one in Japan, and that'd be getting a whole different season to what we're getting here. That we can feel that tree in there. Look at that. And sometimes, even when that's getting towards the end of the painting, some of these nice sort of soft edges, lost and found edges that I'm creating with even the tissue and the soft brush, rubbing it back, is what I can use in the final effect. There's Joshua Spielberg on the job over there.
Get back to work.
What's the time?
11:30.
Okay. We'll get that going there, and we'll probably do another 15 or 20 minutes here, just so. But I'd like you to do that, and just to get the stain, I just want you to use the gum terps, those See the colours I've used? There's only ultramarine, alizarin, red gold, or your Indian yellow if you haven't got the red gold. You could use a little bit of the cad in those darks, as I said, or you can use a little bit of raw sienna. As I said, it's all about the red, yellow and blue, but see the values I've got here. Those strong dark values in first. Just the sky with just a little bit of a little bit of white with it, and a little bit of the ultramarine, a little bit of cerulean in areas, and I've seen even rubbing it back to give me the lighter tone with the with our white of the board in there. As I said, if you can get it to this stage and try and be patient and not paint the whole painting. I just like to see you get a good stain in with the values, similar to our black and white what we did. Think about your composition like we've been discussing here, and a little photoshopping going on. I'll pin these back up so you can see. You should be able to see him there, the Photoshop version. Didn't want to put him there, didn't want terps running all over it. There we go, that one. And this is more the original concept here. Put him in just there. I think everyone can sort of see that. That there we go. Right. Now that's even it's even sort of tacky because the gesso really sucks it into a nice thing. As I was saying, material preparation is so important to your painting process. How the paint reacts to the surface, how you can push it around, the whole thing. And a great book I've got here, I bought when I first started painting. You might be able to pick it up secondhand somewhere. Fantastic read. Painting Methods of the Impressionists by Bernard Dunstan, R.A. He analysed the techniques of all these different artists through history: Monet, Renoir, Pizarro, Degas, Turner, Constable, Cezanne, Voulard, Bonnard, Sickert, Whistler. Makes for really interesting reading, and I learned a lot out of this book when I first started painting, actually. And I got a Richard Schmid book too. I bought it at the same time. Both books I learned a lot out of. I've been lucky to paint with some good artists too. Robert Simpson, who does contemporary work these days. Doug, John Sharman. The three of us used to go on painting trips a lot, and camp and paint. Stay out for a week at a time, out in the field, and that's probably where I've learnt to paint. Understanding nature, understanding light, understanding mood, that sort of thing. That I can push the photo around from a lot of the stuff I've learnt from nature, and that really helps when you're in the studio on a rainy day and that sort of thing. Just let that dry back a little bit, and I'll do a little bit of painting around here, and we'll nearly be finished for the second lesson, and I'll get used to it. But I'll just show you. This is my favourite gesso. I'll just show, and I'll do a separate little video, and I'll put it on later for you, of a slow build-up of the preparation of it. But don't know whether you can see that there. Look how thick that gesso is. Look at that. It's brilliant. And I put it on, and I'll show you. I'll do a little demonstration. I'll post it on the page later for you, so you can see just the build-up, because it takes a bit of time drying in between, but I usually do 3 layers. But that's my favourite gesso there. Good bucket of it. It's the Atelier Atelier traditional gesso primer, and it's a lovely thick one. And you put it on pretty thick to start with, and it's amazing how it shrinks back on your surface. That's why I build it up in 3 layers, and I don't know if you can see, I'll get close here. See that lovely texture in there of all the under strokes of the gesso? Have a look at that. See it coming through the initial wash here? See the wash? Can you see all that detail in there? Look at that. Look at our values here, dark and light, same as black. And we've just converted, tweaked it with a little bit of colour, haven't we? Look at that. There we go. All right, we've got that. Now, I shall scrape the vertical palette clear for us, and we'll put a couple of touches on. And what I like to do is what we've got here. All our darks are in, and once we start and put a few highlights on, it gives me an idea of the extreme of my values of dark and light. I go the darkest darks, and bang, I'll put a few lights on, and that gives me the idea of, excuse me, the values we're after in the painting here. And it's also, a lot of people struggle, and also when you're plein air painting too, a good thing to remember is, once you get this established as a ballpark figure, analyse your painting and find an obvious colour or tone, and place a bit of it on there. Where a lot of the obvious colour and tone here is, you know, the high key grey of the shed, isn't it? So if we'll place some of that on soon, then we can relate the high key grey of the shed to, say, the value of the grey green there. Then we can relate the grey colour in our shed to, say, the soft grey greens in the grass here, and the blondie greys in our grass. So it's all relating those lights and shades and darks and values in our painting. Okay. What's that one like? Now I'm going to come to putting a bit of colour around our shed here. I might finish that little area just in here for us before we break till Monday. Let's have a look. As I said, just clean the palette here. There we go. Now the iron's got a nice sort of warmth to it, so we get plenty of white. When we're doing big areas, look at that heap of white, look at that. Even that blue grey that was still in my brush is going to help me paint that. And one of the things I usually do in my painting, just to simplify the process and not have hundreds of brushes, I probably only use in this painting 4 or 5 brushes, if that, and my knife. I'll have a dark tone brush, see the dark tones there? So I can just quickly go to a dark tone. And I have a light tone brush. So it means I can do the tin and the sky and all that with the one brush, and even sometimes those light areas of the grasses there. So it keeps the process a little bit simpler, and I haven't got hundreds of brushes. And I'm also using the big brushes, and as we come down in areas where I need it, I'll use the smaller brushes. But in general, this painting will be more of a bigger brush painting. I was just looking at there, that looks good. I might even send those oaks back a little bit to tonally step it back, and so it gives us that nice sort of depth and feeling in the painting. Okay, and we'll go maybe a little bit of cerulean, a little bit of yellow ochre will get us that warmth that's in the roof. There's variation in that too, little bits of rust. So a little bit of our, there we go. That's nice. A little bit of that red oxide's a great rust colour. And this wall here as well. See that wall there? I think they gave it a silver frost, but it's got a bit of rust in the roofs and a bit of rust there. I'll flick a bit of rust on that there to make that more interesting as well, but we'll think about that when we get there. Love that warmth. Okay, the GoPro zoom in on this for us as well when we need it, and Josh will edit it for you. Look at that. See that? Again before. Nice loaded brush. See the square edge? Ideal for doing our buildings and that sort of thing. And we've got a subtle grey in here as well. We'll get him in. Cutting around where the trees, and looking back at the subject too, that is a bit bothered. I can see it comes down to about there. So we'll get that in there. Enrich it. And yeah, look at that bit of rust colour on there, yum. And variations of it. Yep, there we go. And get it again. Get the line of him. It's important to get that lovely sort of scale of this roof too. It's a great scale. There we go, look at that. And we can need to, just the edge of the knife's great for that. Look at that, little edges here and there. And it has a subtle, I love that little subtle, you can see it kicking about that far down. It's all in the drawing process and the observation of seeing those lovely little change-ups. There we go, look at that. I'm used to going to my palette there, that's why I keep walking to it. And a bit more even blue-grey, I love that colour in the tin. There we go. A bit subtly darker in tone here and there. Just there we go. Again, plenty of paint on the edge of the brush, especially painting things like this, that lovely, there we go. Lovely sort of high-keyed, and I can see that lovely little bit of rust here. There we go, strengthen him a bit. We got him, and we've got the light there. We've got to make that a bit more of a grey, just a high-keyed grey. Warm it a bit. Oh, this has got to be subtly different to our grasses and the other greys in the painting. There we go. Couple of warms in there amongst him. That's it. I'll take that. And it's about there roughly. There we go. Look at that. Already starts to take, doesn't it? Even with the even our darks, lights, working the focal point out of the painting here. And Yeah, this blends. The knife's a great tool for sort of that blending and softening in a painting and hardening an edge up there. Bringing down a fraction. There we go. Just that little bit of that. Just to correct around the focal point, I'll just mix up a little bit of that dark there. There we go. Just to give me that. Looking at it, yeah, maybe become a little bit longer, I'm thinking. Maybe to there. As I say, I was talking before about listening to your painting. And I'm thinking it could come through a bit more there. We'll see. Maybe just a fraction. We'll have a look here. About there. Do that. Yeah, I'm thinking just a little bit longer. Just a tad. As I said, Josh will have this all edited and uploaded for the final version, so you'll get a bit more of this sort of close-up. See the close-up of the brush strokes here? You can see that texture there. And we'll get that coming back that way. There we go. And pushing it in and back in there, you get that lovely blending effect that the shed has. Taking through. Get that line. A lot of the times I'm leveling things, I'm leveling it. Yeah, so the GoPro lasted a bit longer because it wasn't live streaming, so he'll be able to add that in for us. And I'll get just the ends of the building in here now, and you can paint that in, and then Monday morning we'll move on to the next stage of our painting. Just using a fine, sharper edge fill. There's that lovely sharp edge there, and that little angle there looks great. Look at that. So it's just virtually getting a slight mid-tone. I'm using a bit of that colour I got in there earlier, the dark, which I'll use. And a lot of the time you're doing this as well when I paint the trees in behind, the oaks in behind, I'll be correcting, some of the shapes as well. Yeah, a bit of cerulean. I can put some straight cerulean in there. Look at that. Looks like tinning shadow there. The cools. There we go. And as I said, the shadow of the trees there. That's it. Look at that. It's all about the dark and light values. cools and warms. A little bit of cooler blue-grey in the end of the shed there. There we go, look at that. Lovely. And we'll do a bit here, and then we'll finish up. And we'll get used to get yours on the road as well. And the painting will slowly develop. You can see how much we've got done today. Put a shadow in there. Warmed up. Get it for me. Oh, yeah, with that little touch of Indian red there, just around our focal point. Yum. Little happy accident, I'll leave that there. It did something for the painting, came to life. What I meant to say, I'm not sure what I said before. What I said before was when I first started painting, my artist friend Greg Turner, used to live at Orange, Western New South Wales, where this actual subject was. One of the things he said when I first started early painting, I used to paint with him a bit. In nature, what happens here, everything that reflects down in nature is cool, and everything that reflects up is warm. And the same thing applies in portraits. When you look at portraits, reflected lights, everything that bounces up under your chin, eyes and under the nose is warm. Everything that bounces down on the head or side is cool. Same thing's happening here. Bit cooler blue-grey because we've got the blue sky bouncing into the side of our shed there. Same thing's going to happen on the roof here when we refine that. It's going to be cooler blue-greys in there. So it's one thing, good thing to remember when you're painting. Everything that reflects up is warm. Everything that reflects down is cool in your painting, in shadows that is, when you're painting shadows. You can see the variation of greys I'm getting into this little building here. And I need to warm him up again a bit there. There we go. See the edge of the brush there, because it's a nice bright with a hard edge to it. And look at that. And our focal point, we're trying to make this as interesting as possible. There we go. And it's always good, even in the studio, like I do in nature, keep stepping backwards and forwards from your painting and see how it's shaping up. The oak will probably be softened over in areas you can see that sort of the foliage and that sort of thing, so it'll probably come into there roughly. There we go. And soften it back into the picture a bit. And that's the beauty of the knife. You can just use the edge of it and get a sharp edge here and there, and you can also sort of soften out with it and pick up an extra texture. You can see that little bit of value I've picked up there and there. And just for argument's sake while we're here, I might even just push in a little bit of that light colour there. Just that little bit of light colouring behind, just block it in. Just a there we go. Got a bit of a alizarin there, just warmed up with a bit of autumny colour. This can be corrected, but just to bring it out a bit more to show you is, here in the brush, just to show you the value of how, when we get that there, we want our little roof to pop there. See that? And what we're doing here, we're working, as I said, we're working out of our focal point. A little bit of reddy colour, look at that. Some of that, you can see it in that. There we go, look at that. starting to zing a bit. So don't get stuck in one little area you're painting. Try and move, work the whole subject around. There we go. And we'll get that edge there. There we go. Come back in with the brush, we can soften. See, with the knife you can use a bit of both, backwards and forwards. Get the desired effect you want in your painting. Well, that's getting there. There we go. And the grass will come to about there roughly. Gives a leveler. We can soften it back up over. But that has given us something to work with. There's a few little darks in there too. I'll get them in that where it runs down. There we go. There we go. We'll leave that till Monday. So get yours stained in, and like I said, to the composition you like. But see how, try and work out of your focal point in the painting, and the painting is going to grow out of this. And what surrounds that will have to complement the focal point, and we've got to work a bit more on that. So okay folks, we'll see you Monday morning or later today with the GoPro here. It's going to be edited with the main cam mix for you, so keep tuned, and we'll see you Monday and have a look at the edited version with everything else on there now. Okay then, bye. Ci vediamo.